Welcome, everyone. We're taking a journey into Alice Walker's incredibly moving, really powerful short story, Strong Horse Tea. And this isn't just, a story. It's a stark look, unblinking, at these huge themes of race, class, access, and the human spirit. Its strength when facing just impossible odds. So our mission today, it's more than just summarizing this heartbreaking story. We want to critically examine all those layers of social commentary, especially maybe through a post-colonial lens. And the brutal realities of racism you see running through these characters' lives, it's a story that, well, it refuses to let you look away. It forces us, really, to confront some uncomfortable truths, painful ones about our world and about those invisible walls that, let's face it, still exist. So what strikes you first? Thinking about a story like this from Alice Walker.
Well, what immediately comes to mind is Walker's just, unparalleled ability. How she takes these vast systemic injustices and boils them down into the intimate struggle of one person, one family. Strong Horse Tea uses this very personal fight of a mother and her child to line up these huge systemic failures, these deep-seated prejudices that honestly still echo today. It's a story designed first to make you feel it, the desperation, the fear, all raw. And then it compels you to think about the bigger picture, the societal implications. And when we talk about a post-colonial lens here, we're really looking at how the lingering effects, historical power imbalances, how they still shape things, even after colonialism is supposedly over, how it shapes someone's options, how they see themselves, and crucially how others, especially those with power, see and treat them. It's a powerful piece. Shows how deeply personal grief can expose these universal injustices.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just some isolated tragedy. It's like a microcosm of a much larger system. Okay, so our journey into Strong Horse Tea starts with Rannie Toomer. Alice Walker sketches her with this poignant brevity. She's instantly unforgettable. Rannie's a young Black woman, unmarried, living out in this rural, isolated place. And Walker doesn't waste a word establishing her marginalization. She tells us point blank, she was not pretty. Was not anybody much. And he was all she had. This description, it's not just physical. It's potent social commentary. Right away, it establishes her vulnerability and the immense weight of her only attachment. Her baby boy, Snooks, he's her whole world, her reason. And tragically, the source of her deepest anguish right now. Without him, she would be nobody much. And back then, for a young Black woman, that was terrifying.
And the crisis with Snooks, it's devastatingly specific. It really underscores the lethal reality of having no access to healthcare. He's dying from double pneumonia and whooping cough. I mean, that combination, in his situation, with zero medical help, it's basically a death sentence. And Walker, she doesn't shy away from the details. The description is harrowing. Hard to shake. We see him described as a small, gravel-like mound in the bed, his head like a ball of putty wedged between the thin covers and the yellow pillow. His little eyes are partly open, as if you were peeping out of his hard-waisted skull. Just chilling. And maybe the most chilling part. The forceful pulse of his breathing caused a faint rustling in the sheets near his mouth, like the wind pushing damp papers in a shallow ditch. It's more than just describing sickness. It's sensory. You feel the direness, the closeness of death, the struggle of that tiny body just trying to breathe. It's like a physical manifestation of vulnerability in a world with no safety net.
And Rannie's own state, it mirrors Snook's decline. It embodies that physical, that emotional toll of constant worry and abject poverty. We learned she had not washed since Snooks took sick 5 days ago. And there are these whitish snail tracks lacing her face. Her eyes are sticky with tears. She's completely neglected herself, just lost in the fear for her child. Her desperation isn't just emotion, it's physically etched on her, a visible sign of her suffering. And all this is made worse by her isolation. She's out in the middle of nowhere, basically, far from any doctor, physically, metaphorically stranded. This distance, it's not just geography, is it? It hints right away at those deeper systemic barriers. The ones keeping people like Rannie from basic things, especially healthcare. She's not just alone, she's actively cut off.
Right. And it's in this context, this isolation and desperation, that Walker introduces a really critical conflict, this clash between modern medicine, Western medicine, and traditional Black folk remedies. So we meet Sarah, an old neighboring lady. She clearly represents this deep-rooted traditional wisdom Sarah's described vividly, wearing magic leaves around her neck, sewed up in possum skin next to her dried lizard's foot. And, people said she knew about magic, could do it herself. She offers Rannie old home remedies. But what's fascinating, truly fascinating here, is how Rannie, despite her own terrible situation, how she initially internalizes this devaluation of her own cultural practices. She fiercely dismisses Sarah's help, thinks of it as swamp magic. She even says, all the old home remedies I took when I was a child come just short of killing me. So she sees Sarah's remedies as primitive, dangerous even, superstitious, while she idealizes the real doctor.
Exactly. It's a classic agonizing example of that struggle, isn't it? For recognition, for legitimacy. Randy's reaching for what society, what she's been relentlessly told is better. Legitimate medicine, effective medicine, even if that better option is completely out of reach for her. Her insistence on a real doctor, it highlights her belief that Western medicine is the superior form of healing. And this isn't just personal preference, right? It speaks to that broader societal conditioning, that internalized colonial mindset, where the dominant culture's solutions seem inherently better, inherently trustworthy, even when they're totally unattainable for people on the margins. She's desperate for what she thinks is the only truly effective modern solution, because everything in her world has told her it is. It's tragic, really. She's absorbed the colonizer's belief system, the superiority of Western medicine, so much that she devalues her own community's knowledge, even when it's the only thing available. It's like a subtle but devastating self-inflicted wound, born from systemic oppression.
So she's desperate, isolated, and she pins all her hopes on the one tangible link she thinks she has to the outside world, to that idealized real doctor, and that link is the mailman. This character, he isn't just delivering letters. He's presented as this crucial, almost mythic connection between Randy's neglected world and the promise of a society that functions, that cares. He's her only thread, her last hope, really. His simply being there on that rutted road represents the closest she can get to a system that should, in theory, serve everyone.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting and deeply unsettling. This mailman isn't just a mailman. He's a hugely symbolic figure, isn't he? He physically carries the outside world to Randy. It's ads, it's news, it's trivial stuff. But he also carries its prejudices, its indifference, its biases right to her doorstep. We find out she has this history with him, these naive interactions. She used to ask about the advertising circulars, thinking they were things she could just have, not buy. She'd innocently ask if someone was coming around to give her, hats and suitcases and shoes and sweaters and rubbing alcohol and a heater and a fur bonnet for her baby. And the mailman, with this condescending tone, he'd patiently explain she had to buy them. But the really poignant detail, the heartbreaking one, she used these circulars to paper the inside of her house to keep out the wind. I mean, that's such a powerful image, making do with scraps. Scraps from an alien consumer culture that promises so much but gives her absolutely nothing. She's literally trying to make something functional out of trash. It highlights her extreme poverty, the huge gap between her world and the advertised one. He's the gatekeeper, not just of mail, but of access, information, and ultimately hope.
Absolutely. He's a physical embodiment of the structures Randy's up against. And he's the first real human barrier between her and the healthcare she needs so desperately. His internal thoughts, his external actions, they reveal this deeply ingrained prejudice. It's chilling in its casual cruelty. When Randy approaches him, sticks her dripping head inside his car, what does he do? He immediately recoils from her breath, notices her wetness and damp, judges her as more ignorant than usual. His main concern isn't her dying child or her obvious desperation. It's his own fear of catching a cold, his discomfort with her physical presence. This physical repulsion, it's a stark sign of his disdain, reducing her to an inconvenience, a potential source of contamination, not a fellow human in distress.
And the narration just lays bare his internal racism with such raw honesty, doesn't it? He thinks black people as black as Randy May always made him uneasy, especially when they didn't smell good. And when you could tell they didn't right away. Then, Randy May leaning in over him out of the rain smelt like a wet goat. This isn't just a fleeting thought. It's the foundation for how he acts. It reveals this explicit, dehumanizing racism and classism, too. It strips Randy of her humanity, reduces her to that stereotype, the unclean, undesirable black person. It's prejudice rooted in ignorance and fear. And it says so much about how people like Randy were just perceived and dismissed by the dominant society then. This kind of thinking, it justified neglecting entire communities, systemically.
And the thought right after that observation is just as damning. Maybe more so, because it's so casual. Why did colored folks always want you to do something for them? Unquote. That internal question, it perfectly captures how he sees black people, as burdensome, inherently demanding. It shifts the blame for their needs onto them. Instead of acknowledging the systemic issues creating those needs, it reflects that dominant narrative back then, right? That portrayed black people as reliant, unself-sufficient, ignoring centuries of systemic disenfranchisement that created those needs. Walker doesn't just show prejudice. She exposes the moral bankruptcy of indifference, especially when it's disguised as promoting self-reliance for those stripped of resources. His little sympathetic comments, they're right. They're completely hollow. Empty gestures. He makes a move to roll up his window. He wants to escape Randy and her problems, literally and figuratively. He wants distance, no responsibility.
And his solution, that's the ultimate betrayal, isn't it? A complete abdication. He suggests old Aunt Sarah's home remedies to Randy, despite his earlier internal thought that, if it didn't work on whites, probably would on blacks. No. It just reveals his profound hypocrisy, his deep-seated racist belief that black people are somehow suitable for magic. For remedies white people would instantly dismiss as primitive, ineffective. He's pushing her back to the very thing she rejected, not because he thinks they'll work, but out of dismissive prejudice, basically saying, your problems aren't my problems. Your kind should stick to your kind of solutions. And Ranny, of course, she frantically refuses. She screams, we want a doctor, a real doctor. You get us a doctor from town. Her unwavering belief in the real doctor, her refusal to accept less despite everything, it was heartbreaking. So intense, she's desperately clinging to the promise of modern healthcare, a promise that's repeatedly withheld from her.
Which raises this profoundly important question for us, doesn't it? How does this whole interaction show not just individual prejudice, but a larger system? A system that actively denies access and dehumanizes marginalized people. The mailman isn't just a rude guy, though he is rude. He's a cog in the machine, a system that withholds vital resources, like healthcare, based on race and class. His casual indifference becomes his profound act of systemic abandonment, his hurried rolling up the window, speeding away, cringing from the thought that she'd put her hands on him. That doesn't just seal his betrayal, it confirms the systemic indifference that values his comfort over Snooks's life. He physically recoils from her touch, sees her not as a human in distress, but as something dirty, contaminating, to be avoided. That's the ultimate dehumanization, the withdrawal of empathy, of support, leaving Randy completely, utterly isolated.
So what does this all really mean for Ranny? It means she isn't just fighting a disease, she's fighting an entire system, one that's actively designed to ignore her, to push her away, and ultimately to fail her. That cringing from her touch, that physical repulsion, it's not just personal, it's a powerful symbol of the societal walls built against her, walls that effectively decide who lives and who dies. It's a chilling reminder of how systemic racism works, not always through overt violence, but through those insidious everyday acts: dismissal, dehumanization. So after the mailman speeds off, Ranny's left there, alone in the driving rain, utterly bereft. She curses his empty words, old home remedies, old home remedies. And then with a sudden frustration, she tramples those wet advertising circulars under her feet. This isn't just anger, is it? It feels symbolic. A rejection of the false promises, the illusions of the white world, goods and services always out of her reach. She heads back to her house, walking through this pasture, surrounded by dozens of fat white folks' cows and an old gray horse and a mule or two. That setting, filled with animals symbolizing wealth, sustenance for others, it's a subtle but powerful reminder of the resources, the comfort she lacks, living in the literal and metaphorical margin, surrounded by plenty yet possessing nothing, a stark visual of that economic gap.
And despite the mailman's clear brush-off, Randy holds on to this fragile, almost desperate hope. She goes back to her house, somehow convinced against all evidence that the real doctor is still coming. But it's less than an hour later, Sarah shows up, the old woman with the folk remedies, tramping through the grass on her walking stick, entering Randy's home. Her presence is undeniable. Randy can't pretend she's not there, smoke's coming from the chimney. So she lets Sarah in, even though she's still mentally resisting, still clinging to those internalized biases. She thinks, old woman, old as that, ought to forget trying to cure other people with her nigger magic, ought to use some of it on herself.
Yeah.
Even in her despair, she's still expressing this strong internal rejection of Sarah's methods, which just further highlights how deep that bias against her own culture's wisdom really runs. It's a poignant testament, really, to the psychological toll of internalized oppression.
But then comes the crushing truth. The moment where Ranny's very last thread of hope from that outside world is finally brutally severed. Sarah, with her quiet wisdom, her directness, she delivers the devastating news. The doctor ain't coming, and she reviews why. The mailman didn't get no further with that message than the road in front of my house. He just yelled the message to Sarah, implicitly expecting her to deal with it. To shoulder the responsibility he, as a representative of the dominant society, refused to carry. He deliberately diverted the problem, pushed it back onto the marginalized community, back to the very magic he disdained, rather than engaging himself. This is the ultimate proof of his indifference, of the complete systemic abandonment Ranny faces. The real doctor was never coming. It was a mirage, a cruel trick.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, Sarah's revelation, it just exposes the complete breakdown of trust and the active complicity of the dominant society in Randy's suffering. The mailman's glib, "We'll see what we can do," a bald-faced lie, a hollow promise that just rerouted responsibility, reinforcing Randy's isolation, deepening her despair, Randy's moaning afterwards, her sudden sharp awareness of Snooks's labored breathing. It signifies that visceral realization. Complete abandonment. The system failed her, utterly. And now even her last desperate hope. Dashed. There is no outside help coming. She's truly, utterly alone. Staring into the abyss of her child's impending death. This is the turning point. All other options vanish, leaving only the unthinkable.
It's such a moment of profound heartbreak, isn't it? That last thread of hope just cut. And Randy's left with the very magic she scorned, the swamp magic she'd rejected so fiercely. But now, absolutely nowhere else to turn. Her maternal desperation just overrides everything. Her biases, her dignity, her repulsion, everything. She cries, "Make him well, oh my Lord, make him well," and snatches up the baby, thrusts him into Sarah's arms. She's utterly broken, bereft, completely dependent on the very source of help she initially dismissed, a complete reversal, forced by cruel circumstance.
In Sarah's response, not judgment, but this calm, almost stoic pragmatism. She gently examines Snooks, observes that purplish blue hue around his eyes, his mouth, the telltale signs of oxygen deprivation. Then she just bluntly states the terrible truth, echoing the story's unblinking honesty. The child's dying. She acknowledges her limits. She's not promising a miracle, but offers a desperate last chance. A sliver of hope in hopelessness. She says, but there still might be something we can do. Randy's on her knees, wringing her hands, pleading, begging. What, Aunt Sarah, what? Fastening hungry eyes on Sarah's lips, desperate for anything, any possibility, no matter how remote or unpalatable.
And this is where the story introduces the truly horrific cure, the desperate measure that highlights the absolute depths of Randy's situation. Sarah explains the only thing that might save the child now, the only thing she has left, is some good strong horse tea.
Oh.
And she emphasizes the need for a mighty strong stomach, pointedly not for the baby, who won't know what it is he's drinking, but for Ranny herself, to even contemplate, let alone administer, such a visceral, almost unthinkable remedy. You the one gotta have a strong stomach, Sarah tells her. The implication is crystal clear. Ranny must overcome her own profound revulsion for this faint possibility. It's a test of love, of endurance.
Randy gets it immediately, what horse tea means, her trembling way down deep in her stomach. It illustrates that profound disgust mixed with overwhelming, all-consuming maternal desperation as a primal conflict inside her. Revulsion battling the instinct to save her child at any cost. She even briefly thinks about other messes with bat's wings she'd heard Sarah mix for people sick in the head, which emphasizes the extreme, almost pagan nature of this cure, how far beyond conventional thought she's being pushed. The imagery here is designed to shock you, to highlight the depths of Randy's situation, the utter lack of any other option, the horrific choices forced upon the utterly marginalized. It's a brutal measure, a return to a pre-modern, desperate form of healing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Horse tea. It's so viscerally shocking, primal, profoundly unsettling in its crudeness. But it also represents the absolute limits, doesn't it, of what Ranny has left. The final desperate recourse when every other path, every societal institution, every promise of modernity is closed off. It vividly represents how marginalized people are forced to turn to the most extreme measures for survival, measures the real doctors of the world would never even consider because they'd never have to. It strips away all pretense of dignity, leaving only raw, desperate survival.
This is truly where the story delves into the depths of maternal love and the almost unimaginable lengths a mother will go to when all else fails. It's a forced return to a raw, almost pagan attempt at survival, a stark, brutal contrast to that sterile, inaccessible real doctor she wanted so badly. It highlights the vast difference in resources, in options, based on your position in society. For Ranny, the real medicine is out of reach, leaving her with remedies that test the very limits of her own endurance, physical and emotional. This moment, it isn't really about whether the tea works. It's about the profound, unyielding nature of a mother's will.
So, with Sarah's grim, urgent instruction, Ranny, without a moment's hesitation, grabs her wet coat and steps out into the raging storm, heading towards the pasture where the animals are. Her journey, it isn't just a walk, it's an ordeal, arduous, almost mythic. Her thin plastic shoes were sucked up by the mud, but she pushes forward. With this desperate, almost instinctual drive, she's not thinking rationally anymore, she's just acting, driven by that overwhelming primal need to save her child, to seize this last horrifying chance. Every step is an act of pure will against a world determined to beat her.
And the storm itself, it mirrors her internal turmoil and the unforgiving nature of her world. It's a powerful use of pathetic fallacy. Rain fell against her face with the force of small hailstones. Thunder rose, exploded like a giant firecracker. Lightning streaked across the sky, setting the air white and charged. The elements themselves seemed to conspire against her, making her desperate quest even harder, reflecting the huge obstacles she faces, inside and out. This isn't just bad weather. It's like a cosmic reflection of her suffering. The chaos, the violence of a universe that seems indifferent, even hostile. The physical struggle is part of her punishment, as much as the emotional one.
She endures this agonizing wait in the tempest, nearly an hour, for the lone gray mare to finally relieve itself. And in that tense moment, a critical error strikes her. Born of panic, haste, lack of resources, she realizes devastatingly she had brought nothing to catch the precious tea in. The small detail, it's devastating. It underscores her lack of preparation, the suddenness of her desperate decision, the utter absence of even basic tools for this grotesque task. It highlights how desperation strips away foresight, leaving only urgent, immediate action. She's improvising a remedy in the most dire circumstances, with nothing but the clothes on her back.
What follows is just frantic, almost surreal, a chase scene bordering on the grotesque. Randy slips in the mud trying to get a shoe off to catch the tea. The mare, sensing her frantic moves, walks away. Ranny, now covered in mud, her dignity gone, races after the mare, holding out her plastic shoe as if for alms. That imagery connects back so powerfully, doesn't it, to her earlier pleas, asking the mailman for basic needs. Now she's literally begging from an animal, further emphasizing her dehumanization, the depth of her despair, reduced to chasing animal waste in a storm, for a faint chance at life for her child. It's a scene of profound degradation, but also profound maternal love.
Meanwhile, back in the house, far from the storm's fury, Sarah sits by the fire, muttering, her shawls pulled tight. A solitary vigil. She's aware of the storm, the lightning flashing, lighting up the room, like the last flickering moments of a life. Then comes that terrifying moment. Stillness. Silence that screams. Sarah hobbles over to the bed, and there, she realizes. The frail breathing had stopped with the thunder, not to come again. Tinks dies. Alone. Quietly. In the care of the traditional healer, while his mother is out in the raging storm, on her desperate, futile quest for the strong horse tea. It's a silence that speaks volumes. A death signifying the ultimate failure of all systems to protect him.
And then, the bitter harvest. Rennie stumbles back through the mud-washed pasture, holding out her plastic shoe, having gathered what she could of the tea, in spurts and splashes mixed with rainwater. In a final act of almost cruel, indifferent fate, the old mare snorts, knocks her back into the mud, a last indignity. Randy rises, trembling, crying. Clutching the shoe, she realizes there's a leak, a tiny crack at her shoe's front. The precious, horrifying liquid is seeping out. And what did she do? Quickly, she stuck her mouth there, over the crack, and runs home to give the still warm horse tea to her baby Snooks. This grotesque image, it's the final, heartbreaking testament to her profound maternal devotion, her willingness to ingest the unthinkable. Utterly unaware that it's already too late, she sacrificed everything, even her basic human dignity, for ghost of a chance.
It's almost unbearable to think about, isn't it? The sheer physical, emotional effort, the ultimate degradation she endures, all for a remedy that, even if it had worked, would have been almost unthinkable. And the ultimate irony, the cruelest twist, it was all for naught. She was literally drinking from the shoe, absorbing the last remnants of what she thought could save him, only to return and find him gone. It's a moment of profound, tragic irony, underscoring the deep futility of her situation.
Which raises that important question again.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of Randy's actions right at the end? Bringing the horse tea back to a child already gone. Is it just futility, the bitter end to a desperate quest? Or is it something more profound about the nature of a mother's love? A love that transcends reason, dignity, even death itself. It's a powerful, almost mythic portrayal of a mother's will. A love so fierce it defies the finality of death. It speaks to that enduring, unbreakable bond between mother and child, even in the face of insurmountable loss.
Okay, let's take an even deeper dive now into what Alice Walker is truly telling us here, through Ranny's story, particularly using that lens of post-colonial perspectives and the deep, lasting scars of racism. Because this isn't just a story about a sick child, is it? It's a profound commentary on those invisible walls, built by racism, by classism, walls that, in a very real way, determine who gets to live and who dies. Snook's death isn't merely a personal tragedy for Ranny, it's a direct, devastating consequence of a society that actively denies basic health care to its most vulnerable Black citizens. The real doctor she wants so badly, not a real option for her. An abstract ideal, a cruel symbol of a system that's fundamentally unavailable, utterly indifferent to her suffering.
Precisely. It exposes that post-colonial wound, where the colonizer's values get adopted, idealized even, while the colonizer himself stays aloof, exploitative. The mailman's thoughts, his actions, his dismissal, his physical recoiling, they exemplify the dehumanization Randy experiences, reducing her to a stereotype, not recognizing her as a suffering mother with legitimate needs. His disdain isn't unique to him either. It reflects a broader societal attitude, especially in the Jim Crow South. That viewed the suffering of marginalized Black communities with indifference, sometimes outright contempt. This attitude allowed systemic neglect to just flourish. And furthermore, Randy's initial rejection of Sarah's remedies, her strong belief in the real doctor, that reflects an internalized colonial mindset, a preference for the dominant culture's solutions, even when they're inaccessible or indifferent to her, over her own community's traditional wisdom, practices. She's been conditioned to believe that what is white is inherently superior, inherently more effective, even to her own detriment, delaying her acceptance of the only help actually available.